So in today's video, I'm going to be looking at MJJC's newest foam cannon, which is their Pro V3. So a bit of background to this, it was actually released earlier this year, but there were some issues with the bottle design of it in that it cracked very easily if it was dropped. So MJJC went back to the drawing board and came up with a new bottle, which is a more durable option compared to the other one and doesn't suffer those same issues with durability. So MJJC have kindly sent me the new version of this. And in today's video, I'm going to be comparing it to the Pro V2 and the SV3, looking at the specifications and the performance to help you decide which is going to be the best out of the three for you. So I'll start by unboxing this new Pro V3. And there isn't really much assembly that goes on here. The bottle and the head unit come separately, of course. You just have to connect that pickup pipe that comes in a separate bag to the head unit and just screw that adapter on the back to complete the assembly. It does come with a few spare parts, including a 1.1mm and a 1.35mm orifice. The one that comes installed is a 1.25. And to change this, you can do so before putting that adapter on at the back. Just going to need a flat-headed screwdriver to unscrew it and pop the new one in, and then you can go ahead and pop your adapter back on. It also comes with a spare O-ring. So on all of the MJJC foam cannons, it looks like they do have the same filters in them, which is basically two metal gauzes with a foam filter sandwiched in between them. In terms of the construction, you can obviously see that a lot of it is now stainless steel. There are a couple of brass parts though still, including that M22 connection for the adapter, and also the orifice as well is brass. So what I wanted to do now is look at the specs in a bit more detail, and I'm going to do that side by side with the Pro V2 and the SV3 so you can see what the differences actually are. So I'll start off with the head unit, and these all feature a very similar design. You can adjust the spray pattern to be both vertical and horizontal, and you have an adjustment for those two blades at the front which affects the spray pattern, so you can go from a narrow jet or a wider fan to have more coverage of the foam. In terms of how easy those adjustments are, on the Pro V2 it's quite easy to adjust between that vertical and horizontal pattern, but if you do want to adjust the fan width, then you are going to have to hold on to that red section at the back and twist the black section. On the SV3 and the Pro V3 it's actually the opposite. It's very easy to adjust that front section to affect the fan width just using one hand. However, if you want to adjust the spray pattern, then those blue parts at the back are actually quite a bit stiffer. In terms of which is best out of the Pro V2 and the SV3 and Pro V3, really is kind of personal preference. With that Pro V2, you're never really going to knock that fan pattern when you pick it up, and the horizontal and vertical adjustment is fairly stiff, so you are going to have to use both hands to have that adjustability, but you aren't going to accidentally knock it out of place. With the Pro V3 and the SV3, it's much more likely that you're going to readjust it if you do pick it up by that part, but it's easier to do on the fly when you are foaming up the vehicle. All three foam cannons have that dial on the top which adjusts how much solution it's pulling up into that head unit, and consequently how thick the foam is going to be. They also all have that M22 connection which you use to put your adapter on, and you can unscrew to access the orifice and change or clean it. In terms of the differences, you can see that the Pro V3 is the only one that is featuring some stainless parts, whereas on the Pro V2 and the SV3 it's all just going to be brass. In terms of how leak-proof the bottles are, on the SV3 it's not leak-proof at all. If you do tip it upside down, it is going to leak out of that top part, whereas on the Pro models they are both leak-proof. You will usually get a bit of dribble coming out of the nozzle, which is just going to be the residual solution that's in there, but the actual lid is leak-proof. The only other difference to discuss on those head units is that the Pro V3 has a 28mm thread, which means that you can screw a normal bottle onto it if you do want to do that. It's not something I personally do, but the option is there. On the Pro V2 and the SV3 it doesn't have that option. Now moving on to the bottles, and the first difference is that the Pro V2 doesn't have a quick release. To attach that head unit onto the bottle, it is a threaded connection, so it takes a little bit longer. On the Pro V3 and the SV3 it basically has a 1/4 inch turn where that head unit will kind of seat itself, so it is a bit quicker to actually set up with that, and it is a nice feature. In terms of the bottle opening size, which obviously makes a big difference when it comes to how easy the foam cannons are to fill and empty and rinse out, the Pro models are very, very similar. Potentially the V3 is a hair smaller, but really nothing in terms of practical difference. And the SV3 has definitely a narrower opening. I'd still consider it a wide mouth, but it does make it a touch harder to rinse it out at the end. In terms of the material, all three of these foam cannons actually have a different bottle material. So on the Pro V3 it is a polypropylene or PP bottle, on the Pro V2 it's a HDPE bottle, and on the SV3 it is a PET bottle. So in terms of the actual strength of those bottles and how durable they are, the PET bottle is by far the weakest option. It is typical of these clear plastics, they don't tend to be as strong. In terms of the differences though between the Pro V3 and V2, you would have to be pretty unlucky probably to crack one of them. I'm not going to do any drop tests here, but I am going to link in the description the Cars with Keith YouTube channel, where he does a lot of drop tests and is definitely the go-to if you are looking for that information. In terms of the bottle shapes, some of them are a little bit easier to hold than others. The Pro V2 does have some contours on the bottle, which make it a little bit easier to grip if you do grab that part, but there's nothing on the bottle itself to make it easier to hold. On the SV3, it does have a slight ridge which can make it a bit easier to grip, and on the Pro V3 you're essentially getting both features. So you get those contours on the bottle, and there is a contoured section on the side which again makes it easier to grab that part. In terms of the bottle capacity, there are also a few differences here too. The Pro V3 has the largest bottle, so you've got measurements up to 1200ml, but if you fill it to the absolute brim you can get just under 1300ml in this. With the Pro V2, it has markings up to 1000ml, and when I filled it to the brim I got 1150ml in it. And then with the SV3, it again has markings up to the 1000ml mark, but has a slightly lower overall capacity if you fill it to the brim, of roughly 1075ml. And finally, in terms of the visibility on the bottle, how easy it is to see what you've got in there. The SV3 is of course the winner, as that has the fully transparent bottle. The Pro V2 and SV3, although they look slightly different, they are both translucent, which makes it harder to see inside, but not impossible, especially if you are using a brighter coloured snow foam. The pickup tubes on all of them are very flexible and do have that weighted ball with the filter in at the bottom. This of course means you're not going to draw any debris into the head unit if you happen to have any floating in the bottle, which hopefully you shouldn't. And also the fact that the ball is weighted means that you can use all the solution in that bottle, no matter really what angle you're holding the foam cannon at. The weighted ball and filter has a slightly different design on the Pro V2 compared to the SV3 and Pro V3, but all of them work perfectly well. Finally, onto the spare parts that you get with them, and it is the Pro V3 that definitely wins here. With all three of the foam cannons, you do get a 1.1mm orifice as a spare, but with the Pro V3, you'll also get a 1.35mm orifice, and also you'll get spare filters with that one too. I do wish that the SV3 and Pro V2 also came with spare filters, as I do think that's a really nice addition, but you can find those elsewhere if you are in need of some. Now on to price, and this is where there is a big difference. So I'm going to use Insta Detailing's prices, which are correct at the time of making this video. I'll also link the products in the description as well, so you can check the up-to-date prices. So the Pro V2 is the cheapest at the moment, coming in at $46.95, closely followed by the SV3, which is $49.95, and then there is a massive jump up to the Pro V3, which is $79.95, so definitely one of the most expensive foam cannons on the market. It is worth noting that I do have some discount codes available for all three of these foam cannons, so I will pop links in the description to them, as well as information on those discount codes if you are interested in purchasing one. So now I wanted to jump into the foam test and compare how these all perform. I've popped new filters in the Pro V2 and the SV3, and this is the first time of using the Pro V3, so they should all be performing to their maximum capability. So for this test, they're all rocking that same 1.25mm orifice, and that dial on the top is turned to the maximum, so I'm getting the most foam production. In this first test, I used Geon foam, and I went for a 1:9 dilution here, mixed it up in a measuring jug, and then split it evenly between each foam cannon, so that they were all using the exact same solution. When it came to the foam test, I really couldn't see much, if any, difference between them. Potentially the SV3 and the Pro V2 looked like they had slightly more of that shaving cream consistency when I initially sprayed it on the panel, but I really think I'm splitting hairs here, and it's probably more likely due to a small difference in distance from the panel when I was spraying it, although I did try to keep it as even as possible and keep that spray pattern equal as well. I monitored the dwell time for a few minutes after that initial application, and you can see that all the foams kind of evened out, and I couldn't see any difference in dwell time between them. I also did the same test, but this time with DIY Detail's incredible suds, and I went for 50ml to about 900ml of water here, and again I really couldn't see any difference between the three. It looks like they are all performing here to the same capability. So I did also want to check the draw rate on the foam cannons. This is something that I've done previously with the SV3 and Pro V2, but I was interested to see if there was any difference between how quickly that solution was used up in the bottle, as that is obviously going to affect how thick the foam is. So I filled the foam cannons with 500ml of water and dispensed that into a bucket until it was empty, and measured the total amount of water collected. In all 3 cases, this was 7.5 litres, so again, I couldn't see any difference in the draw rate. And as mentioned previously when I took them apart, it looks like they are all using the same filters. So that explains why I couldn't personally see any difference in performance between these 3. So in terms of my kind of overall thoughts on which to choose, I'd say the performance for them all looked identical from my testing, so I would really just be comparing the specifications and those additional features rather than the actual foam production. The Pro V3 does have definitely more bells and whistles, but you are paying a lot more for it, so you are getting some nice stainless steel on it, as well as a lot more spare parts, that 28mm thread, the slightly larger bottle capacity, and the leak-proof quick connect lid, so it really depends on whether those features are worth it to you. The SV3 is a good option if you really are fixed on that quick release lid, but don't want to pay the extra for the Pro V3. It does, however, come at the expense of having a slightly weaker bottle, although you might appreciate the fact that it's clear and easier to see the measurements in it. Other disadvantages here compared to the Pro V3 are that the lid isn't leak proof, and it also does have a bit of a smaller opening to the bottle, making it harder to fill and empty. In my opinion, I think the Pro V2 is offering the best value for money here. You are still getting that wide mouth bottle, you are just missing out on those extras like the spare parts, the quick release lid, 28mm thread, the fact that it's made from brass and not any stainless, but you are getting a really nice HDPE bottle, which is very, very strong. So as I said, I will pop links in the description to all 3 of these foam cannons, in addition to the discount codes that I have available. If you have found this video helpful, then it would be brilliant if you could drop it a like, and thanks very much for watching.